Hi, my name is Flor. I came to Vertical Encounter about 10 years ago. It was due to the fact that I worked with Eridania and she was my friend. She would always invite me and be like, Flor, hey, we're meeting at home. You want to join us? And I would always say to her, sure, let me see what happens. And I will never show up. She never gave up on me. She would always ask me to join them. In my head, I was thinking, church, God, yeah, I don't think so. But what was different about Eridania was that she would ask me to go to church and she would never make me feel bad about not going. So the next time she would ask me, she would have a smile on her face and she would make me feel comfortable and accepted. So when she told me about the launch, I decided she's my friend. I should go and support her and be there for her, even if I was so nervous. I really didn't want to be there. I was really far from God at that time, and the last thing I wanted was to go into a church. When I first got there, I sat in the car for a very long time, doubting why I was there. I wanted to go back home. There was a moment that I'm like, yeah, I put the car in reverse, and then I looked around and I saw people going into the church, and Josh was standing outside the door in the building, and he seemed very friendly and smiley, and I'm like, okay, Flor, stop being afraid, get out of the car and go inside. She's your friend and you need to be there for her. So I decided to go in, and the launch happened, and then during worship there was a moment that I felt so much peace, and I hadn't felt that in a very, very long time. I was in the lowest point of my life at that moment. I was going through a really hard breakup where my ex-partner was very verbally and mentally abusive, to the point where I lost everything. I mean, I went bankrupt. I sometimes would sleep on the floor of fear of people watching my house and looking for him because he was into some bad stuff. And I knew that at that moment there was something that I felt that was different, and I felt like, okay, I'm gonna stay. I'm not gonna run out of this place right now. So through the worship, I felt this sense of peace, but at the same time, I felt this sense of like, you can't live like that anymore, Flor. You have to do something different. You can't continue living in fear, in grief, in despair. That's how I felt. I felt like I was living in despair. Even though I would go to work with a big old smile on my face, my heart was completely broken. So I decided to come back another day. After that day, I was like, okay, they were nice. Let me try this again. And then I went a couple of times, and then one day I was sitting really far to the left of the building. It was during a worship song at the end when, people were praying. Gloria comes from the other side of the church and walks up to me, and she puts her hand on my heart and says, Flor, you can't live like that anymore. You have to let it go. The little child that's inside of you that is screaming needs healing. I started weeping and like ugly cry, like boogers and everything, like really bad cry. And I felt the little girl that was abused, the little girl that was rejected, the little girl that was wanting to be loved, like she was screaming from my insides, like, it's enough, you have to let it go. And at that moment, I felt like this weight just fall off my shoulders. And I figured, man, if this is just one moment that God used someone at the other side of the church that doesn't know what I'm going through to come talk to me, what else can he do? And I think that was one of the biggest turning points of my life, was that moment when I just said, I have to let it go. I have to just, all that struggle, all that pain, all that I was holding on to without nobody knowing, I needed to let it go. So I decided that I'm gonna go all in. But little did I know that little by little, Pastor would see something in me that I really didn't see. I was very insecure. I really didn't know the Bible. I didn't know how to pray. I didn't know a lot about God. And he was just asking me more questions and getting me more involved. And then he asked me to step in and help with the youth with wildfire. And I was really, really scared to actually do it. So I decided, sure, I'll give it a shot. So at that time when I'm working with the youth, in my personal life, a lot of things were happening. I was dealing with somewhat depression, trying to understand how God was changing me, but at the same time, I wanted to hold on to my old life. I was still smoking. Actually, every time I would leave church, I would get in the car, and the first thing I would think of is like, I'm gonna get home and I'm gonna smoke a cigarette. And then one day I'm sitting in the parking lot and that thought came to my head, and I'm like, how am I doing this? I'm coming to church, I'm working with the youth, and the first thing I'm thinking is I'm gonna get home and I'm gonna smoke a cigarette. And that same day, I had this conviction and this thing in my heart that said, okay, you have to stop. And that was the last day that I had a cigarette. I haven't smoked since then, and that was about, I would say, 9 years ago, because it took about a whole year for me to quit. And those little things started happening in my life. My language started changing. I didn't want to speak the way that I spoke before. I felt uncomfortable, and I wanted to be around young people and be an example to them. And I'm like thinking in my head, what about if a word slips out that is not, appropriate? And those little things started just like changing in my life. I had to be purposeful on the things that I did to make sure that I was honoring God. And I think the moment that clicked in my head that I wanted to honor God is when everything in my life started changing. That is not who I was anymore. And if I wanted to accept the new creation that God made me to be, I had to make a lot of changes in my life. It's never easy to let go of the things that you're so comfortable doing. But I think that when you pray big prayers to God and you say, God, I don't want to be like that anymore, like He starts changing you and putting you in situations where you have to feel uncomfortable, so you have to let go of those things. And I had to accept those growing pains that they were happening. And little by little, I was getting closer to God. I was praying more. I remember that before, if I would be in a meeting with Pastor and he would ask, hey, somebody want to pray? I would be like, don't look at him, look away. He's gonna make eye contact with you. He's gonna ask you to pray. And I was so afraid of praying. There's moments where the enemy attacks me and says, you're not good enough. Do you not know your story? Do you not know who you were? And I have to stop that and say, that's a lie. I'm not that person anymore. I'm a new creation. God has changed me. And know that the way that I came to Vertical Encounter was through that smile that Josh did that day, that the way that he greeted me. I get to do that for other people. I get to maybe at one person that who's feeling uncomfortable to come to church, I get to smile at them and give them a big hug. And it's just so beautiful to be part of this. It's so beautiful to be part of this 10 years and seeing how God is just bringing new people, and God is changing us, and God is pushing us to do more. I'm so grateful to God that He brought me here. I'm so grateful to Eridania that she pushed me and she never forgot about me. And I think that's what we have to remember. That one person that you're praying for, don't stop. That one person that you're trying to pursue to come to church, don't stop, because at one moment in God's timing, it will happen. And that's how I got here. In God's timing, it happened. And I've been here for 10 years, and I'm ready and eager for the next 10 years and what's to come.